It tells a story about how the virus escaped from China and spread throughout the entire world in the spring of 2020. And it uses dots on a map to tell this story. And in this case, the dots aren't representing precise data the way they do in the JHU dashboard. They are used more suggestively to show the movement of people. And I'm going to show you a short clip. What Cooper Hewitt is doing is creating screen recordings of a user moving through the piece. And the New York Times has developed a kind of unique form of information graphics where a user scrolls through a story on the page on their phone or on a desktop computer. And as they scroll through and look at blocks of text, a video is triggered, which plays while they're reading. And so this clip shows you that happening, and it's a very short clip from a longer piece. And you'll hear my voice describing what's going on. And we do that for accessibility for our visitors at Cooper Hewitt, but also makes it a little bit easier to understand without having to read all the material. So I'm going to play this clip, which is about a minute long. March 22nd, 2020. Many of the first known cases clustered around a seafood market in Wuhan, China. A map shows the train station and seafood market. 4 cases grew to dozens by the end of December. A cluster of red dots quickly expands. The departures from Wuhan accelerated over the next 3 weeks. Green dots move outward from Wuhan. Thousands of people were infected. Red dots move among the green dots. 2 days later, the authorities locked down Wuhan. Travel across China nearly stopped. But local outbreaks were already growing quickly. Red dots explode in Chinese cities. As the outbreak moved across China in early January, international travel continued as normal. Thousands of people flew out of Wuhan to cities around the world. Green dots flow through a map of airline routes. Over 900 people went to New York every month. In the US, where testing has lagged, President Trump suspended most travel from Europe. The virus will not have a chance here, he said. But by then, the virus had a secure foothold. Red dots cluster across a map of the US. Whoa, I know it's heavy material. Lines. Lines are another crucial element of graphic design, and of course, a crucial element of data visualization. So what is a line? A line connects 2 points. Lines can be literally a series of points. This is a beautiful graphic published by The Atlantic. And these dots, the dots change in size and intensity, and that conveys data. And they're moving along a timeline, and that creates data. This is another graphic by the New York Times showing where people in New York City, wealthy people, went to. So when the pandemic exploded in the spring of 2020, many people left New York, and they went to places all around the US. And this incredible graphic shows where they went. And the thicker the line, the more people went to that location. So lots of people went to Miami, for example. The most common form of line graph in data graphics is what we call, ironically, a fever graph. And these are graphs that connect dots into a line so that we can see the change in something over time. We can identify the trend of a movement over time. And there are many ways to draw that line, right? To simplify the line, to create a line that is more comprehensible, right? As a movement, as a change. This is a graph of a cholera outbreak in the UK in the 19th century. So this was already being used to graph how diseases spike and fall. So the cholera epidemic rises as more and more people become affected, and then it falls as immunity in the community makes it impossible for the virus to continue making people sick. In this case, I think of bacteria. This may be familiar to you as a kind of icon of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what surprised me was to learn that this image, known as Flatten the Curve, was actually designed in 2007. And at that time, the US Centers for Disease Control created this theoretical graph to show the difference between an unconstrained outbreak of an epidemic or pandemic, such as the cholera outbreak we just looked at, and what would happen if attempts were made to constrain it, for example, through social distancing and the wearing of masks. So there's an outbreak with no intervention, and the goal of Flatten the Curve is to bring down that height and also to stretch out the duration of the pandemic in order to reduce the load on hospital services. And in the winter of 2020, this idea was brought to light and was put into practice. And this particular graphic was designed by Rosamund Pierce at The Economist magazine, which helped to spread this idea and to explain it as a principle, which really became public policy in many countries all around the world. And it also became a symbol of the pandemic itself. So this piece of essentially theoretical graphic design, this schematic drawing of what an epidemic is shaped like and how it might behave, became this ongoing symbol and representation of this new global event. And these are some examples that you can download from the Noun Project, some of the many, many representations of Flatten the Curve that graphic designers created so that we can all use them in our own material. In this one, the second curve has been omitted, right? So sometimes in the desire to simplify data, we actually make it not mean anything. In this one, the element of time has been eliminated, right? So the purpose of Flatten the Curve is actually to stretch out the time of that epidemic peak. And here they're simply collapsed into the same space with a virus kind of as a setting sun. I think it's very interesting to look at what actually happened and what the real shape of the pandemic turned out to be. And again, this is the pandemic as it took shape in the US, which is much worse than it is where you are. So this purple mountain represents the graph, right? This ideal image. And if we look at the spring of 2020, we have this peak and then we have a drop. And if you remember that summer, many people thought the pandemic was going to go away, but actually it rose again in the fall and dropped again, and then reached its really devastating height in the winter of 2021. So Flatten the Curve, was not entirely accurate. We didn't have one curve to defeat, but we've entered a period of rising and falling curves. And these interactive graphics are amazing, that you can go back through history and actually see what these numbers were week after week over the course of the pandemic. In 2022, we have Omicron, which is hugely, more cases than at that height in 2021. So at the New York Times, they actually had to redesign the whole graphic to account for the much higher number of daily cases. So what looked unbelievably high in the December of 2021 is really a fraction of what hit the world and the US a year later. So data graphics have to really be flexible and accommodate for these changes in situations. So let's look at color. Color is such a essential form of communication. And this is another really famous graphic of the pandemic that is also in the collection of Cooper Hewitt. It was created by medical illustrators at the Centers for Disease Control, who used 3D graphics software and medical imaging, images that were available of the actual virus, to create this very idealized kind of planetary image of how the virus is constructed. And you might wonder why. Let's see. Oh yeah, and this also became an icon, of course, and was simplified and personified and transformed in various ways. And these are some little friendly viruses that you can download and work with in your own graphic design, courtesy of the Noun Project. And some of them are kind of basic Bauhaus, and some of them are like scary and drippy and have a sort of a horror film vibe. Some of them are very scary, right? And focus on the worst outcomes of the disease. This one's kind of cute and kind of likable. This one looks like a clock. Indeed, it looks like the beautiful George Nelson clock, which is also in the collection of Cooper Hewitt Museum, a classic of mid-century modern design. So we might wonder, why are the spikes of the virus red? A virus really doesn't have color, and there were no color references that these artists were working with. But they made the spikes red in order to send a sense of urgency and warning in the use of this graphic. And color has, accepted international meanings of stop and caution and safety. And data graphics often pick up on those coded meanings in underscoring the emotional content behind data. So the JHU dashboard uses red to signal the number of cases. Yellow signals the incidence of cases within a population. Green represents vaccinations, which is good. And white indicates fatality rates. And white in many cultures represents death. And white is spiritual. It marks this dark map with points of light. It's quite poetic and beautiful. So let's take a look at the use of color in the hotspot map published every day by the New York Times, showing incidence of cases in the United States. So this is their scale, and it goes from yellow to red to show the number of cases in any given region in the country. And this is what the map looked like in November of 2020. And you can see that many parts of the country were already at the maximum case rate that was predicted. And just 1 month later, that number was much, much higher. And so at the New York Times, they actually had to add the color purple to the scale in order to accommodate these inconceivably higher rates. And we can see that 1 month later, the incidence of COVID is just way higher across the country. And the designers couldn't simply assign a new number to red because people were relying on this map to judge what was going on in their community. So they actually had to extend the scale in order to be truthful and be effective and not confuse people. And here we can see, I've been taking screenshots every week of this map in order to see the movement and change. And while you'll see that there's moments like after the vaccine was introduced, the virus begins to disappear and the map fades to pale yellow. And there's this sense of optimism, and people stop wearing masks and people start returning to normal activity. And you have this very optimistic summer, and then Delta hits and the color changes again. I want to show you a different use of color. These are maps created by an organization, again, a private organization in the US called Policy Map, which creates maps with many, many different demographic layers. So they allow journalists and researchers and government agencies and others to overlay different kinds of data in order to see what's happening geographically, how to correlate different factors with different events going on. And they're very, very careful not to use red to represent something bad. They want to use color in a more neutral way to avoid stigmatizing any particular group or any particular event going on. So this is a map that shows their research during the COVID-19, the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this particular map is showing racial and ethnic groups in Chicago. And the color green here represents neighborhoods that have a high percentage of Black residents. That's the color green. And here we have the color white being used to show neighborhoods with a lower life expectancy. And so we can correlate racial segregation with lower life expectancy. And here, dark purple shows high rates of hypertension, which is a disease associated with high mortality from COVID-19. And are my slides still advancing? Are you seeing the right slide? Slide with dark purple.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. We were very lucky while researching this exhibition to interview Maggie McCullough, who founded Policy Map. I'm going to show you a short excerpt of our interview with her describing the work that she does with data visualization.
One of the things that COVID has really brought to the forefront is that health and disease and healthy lifestyles really are impacted by where somebody lives. Zip code really does play a large part in the health of a person. And so when we set out to map COVID data, it became very clear that these, where you had these heavy rates, were also communities of color, communities where people didn't always have great access to healthcare in the first place. They were communities that had high rates of different types of chronic conditions that made them really vulnerable to dying from COVID were they to catch it. And they were communities where people had jobs that didn't allow them the luxury of working from home and staying safe, but they were having to get on the bus and go to work. Mapping has a real dramatic way to bring that home for people, because they do know like the zip code that they live in, and they know the intersections of the streets in their neighborhoods. And when you zoom in on a map, you can say, oh, I know where that is. Wow, what is going on?
So I think I'm running low on time here. So would it be a good idea if I kind of summarize now and depart so we can have some questions, or should I keep going?
Yeah, sure. We will have time until 5:30, but we can spare 15 minutes to.
So can I continue? Is it okay if I go on?
Yeah. We can go on until 5:30.
Okay, thanks. I have some more to show you, so I appreciate that. So I want to end by talking about humans. All of these dots, lines, and colors represent human lives and human suffering. I'm going to show you a short interview with Scott Reinhard, who is a graphics editor at the New York Times and who was part of the team that was collecting all the data that appears in those hotspot maps and linear graphs. And he and his team at the beginning of the pandemic were working in shifts 24 hours a day collecting this data. Again, it's data that was not being collected by the United States government. I just want to bring this back. And these workers, these essential workers, were doing this work from their apartments, right? We think of the New York Times as big humming building full of people, but people were isolated at home doing this work. So I have a short clip from our interview with Scott Reinhard talking about how the work got done and the kind of mechanics behind this data visualization process, but also the impact on him as a person.
This is an outbreak that started at 0 cases, right? And it started with literally a Google spreadsheet where they were just starting to track each individual case as it came in. So when I showed up in March and it was less than 1,000, it was like it was a Google spreadsheet, and there was just 4 of us in New York, London, and Hong Kong updating this tracker 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so I just like went into it, and it was like a month and a half straight of work, no time off. And as those cases are scaling, eventually it broke the Google spreadsheet because we were like at 60, 70,000 cases. And, the impact just, I'll probably keep referencing this, but the personal impact of just seeing, updating in the morning and then going back in the afternoon to do the update, and there's 3,000 more cases, and you just think, holy shit. So as we were building this, or, starting to maintain and update these trackers, in the background, they had a development team that are building more robust databases that could actually handle the amount of data being piped in, as well as, at that time, they're building a data collecting team, and that includes people tracking, all of the press releases from health departments, but also there's a really, really robust team of developers that are working on scrapers, so that we're constantly scraping data from everywhere as much as we can. Being so deeply close to these numbers, and they haven't really become abstract to me. You know, it's not like I'm just hitting a script and publishing, and it hasn't become automatic.
So I think that's so important to see the craft behind this. I think sometimes when we see data graphics, they just seem magical, like they just come from, quote, science, right? But it's human beings figuring out how to get that data and how to process it, and next one, how to collect it and share it, especially in the absence of any kind of official effort to do that. The last thing I want to show you is an interactive graphic and this beautiful print graphic published just last week by the New York Times on the occasion of 1 million people dead in the United States alone from the pandemic. And when you see this short clip, you will see dots, and those dots all represent people lost, and the dots form into lines and they form into maps, and those lines and maps are how we understand what has happened and what is unfortunately still happening today. So I'm going to play this last clip now. There's no sound. So that is fundamental graphic design used to represent fundamental existential content. And I have such gratitude to all the designers and journalists and scientists and data people who, to me, have been frontline workers, essential workers in this global catastrophe. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for your lovely speech. It is nice to see how the graphic design and design is important for this such serious issues, so it can visualize the facts to us. So we will take some questions. We have 13 minutes. We have first question from Kerem Dündar. It is data is the raw material of the new age. Computation and algorithms are also the new technical language. At this point, in the words of John Maeda, in order to speak machine with computational thinking for sense of making data, do we need to teach statics, mathematics, and code in design education like engineering faculties? How should the current communication design curriculum change?
I think that's a great question. And I think, yes, graphic designers need to have a good understanding of math and statistics in order to be good contributors to this process. But I think also the statisticians and the mathematicians and the engineers need graphic design. And some of the beauty and clarity that we've seen in these graphics really come from the ability to add that element of storytelling and emotional intelligence to these graphics. So there is a strong mathematical basis, but there is also a basis in the fundamentals of visual design. So we need both.
Thank you so much. Is there any other questions? You can ask from chat and question section, or you can just directly ask if you want. Yes, do we have? I think yes. I think everything is clear.
Everybody is stunned.
Understandable. Yeah. So there is no
well,
question.
it's intense. It's intense content. So
there is a question. What is the effect of typography in visualizing a pandemic?
Well, typography is such a key part of data graphics. So for example, in the clip that I showed of zooming in on the map from the Johns Hopkins University dashboard, when you're at a distance view, there is no typography. But at a certain point, as you come in closer, the place names and even the numbers become visible. And so that's a typographic problem, right? And how to choose the right, in all kinds of interactive mapping software, this is a situation, right? That the text has to change depending on where you are. And so there's issues of font size and legibility and font color that all goes away when we're using the tool. We don't notice that, but those are all very complex decisions. And then in this medium that you see on the New York Times, this interactive medium where you have a text box, and then that text box is like superimposed over a moving graphic. That's all typography. And there, I think it's very important for the journalist to be able to see how long is their text and to be able to edit their text in relation to the image, because journalists want to write a lot more than people want to read. And there's this real pressure on that storytelling medium to not overwhelm the graphic with too much text. So the author needs to have typographic control.
Thank you. Is there any other question?
Thank you for the question, Semra.
Thank you so much for your answer also. And do we have another question? Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your great presentation to us, because it is a good collection of the design process for the pandemic, and it shows us how graphic design affect our understanding of current situations, because pandemic is quite complicated issue. So thank you again for your kind speech.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here. I appreciate it.
Is there anything else to say? Last words?
Good luck today. Have a beautiful conference.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
take over the speech. I also would like to thank Professor Ellen Lupton and Professor Ertan Toy for the spectacular presentation with valuable, mind-opening contributions. And we will give a short break, a couple of minutes for other section to start. So see you all.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry, I misclicked.
Okay.
Okay. But
Hello.
it is
Hello,
also okay
Esra.
to unmute, I guess. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hello, Julie.
Okay, great.
Selam Esra.
Selam. Hi, Selam.
So is Michael here? Hello, everybody.
Yes, he seems here, but
Hello, welcome.
Hi.
Hello,
no,
Atkins. Nice to see you.
Hello, hello, David.
I'm here, but I can't seem to turn on my my video. But I am here.
we have to give you the host position. I guess later you can.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
And my internet is actually not working from my hotel, so Michael will be sharing my presentation. So. Michael, hopefully you have internet.
I do. But you also reminded me that I needed to I need to load up the actual presentation document. I had the other things. Let me grab that real quick before we get started.
Yeah. Okay, so we are waiting for Michael's set up the presentation, right? Am I right?
I was told you would maybe make the introduction, and then I would.
Yeah. Yes. I will just. I'm wondering you all set up. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm ready. Yeah, with Julie's presentation.
Okay. And now for our next keynote session, I would like to invite Julie Walsh, Frederick Laffey, and Esra Özkan. And I leave the floor to the host of the session, Michael Berngrover. Please.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kerim. Yes, welcome everyone. And thank you for attending this session. This will be a panel session. And I'll be doing some very light moderation because I think there's so much to talk about that I won't have a whole lot to do except just to get things started. So I will just very briefly introduce our panel again because they're going to take some time to present themselves and their work and their passions before we start to get into a little bit of discussion. But who will be going first? Julie Walsh. Julie Walsh is, I'm proud to say, is a friend of mine of a couple years now, more than a couple years. And she is a curator, an independent curator who has been specializing in new media art. And she'll probably correct me on the terminology because I'm not an art, coming from an art background, but I've gotten to know her because she's been doing some really exciting immersive exhibitions the last couple of years, which she'll be presenting and talking about today. Frederick Laffey is also speaking, and he's another friend who is working with Julie, and he's going to be talking about a project called Art Consortium that he's co-founded, which is working with galleries and museums and other cultural institutions to exhibit their work, and also for collectors of cultural heritage and cultural works. And then we also have Esra Özkan, who has actually spoken in many places, but I've gotten to know Esra just a little bit because she's spoken with a couple of your immersive panels. Your immersive specializes in VR and AR work, and Esra specializes in new media and new technologies and on art, and has curated a number of exhibitions and festivals in Istanbul that use many of these technologies and other technologies that fall even outside of AR and VR. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the floor over to Julie to start, because I think what we'll do is we'll go with Julie, then Frederic, and then Esra, and then we'll follow with some questions and discussions after that. But so Julie, I'm going to start sharing my screen with your presentation, and then you just tell me when to make the changes.
Okay. Well, first I want to say hello to everybody, and thank you, Michael, for my introduction. I would correct you with one thing, and that is I'm a digital art curator, which means that I specialize in new media as well as all types of different immersive technologies, including VR and augmented reality and XR. And thanks so much for inviting me to talk at the Second International Media and Society Symposium in the Immersive Art section. I have curated 6 social web-based VR exhibitions, but because of time constraints of my talk, I'm only going to touch base upon 2 of them. And the structure of my talk today will be, first, I will give you a brief introduction on the social web-based VR exhibition that I curated called Synthetic Corpo Reality. That was created for the grand opening of Meet's Digital Culture Center's virtual exhibition space, which is based physically in Milan and was a result of the pandemic, where the museum had opened. And a month later, the pandemic hit and they weren't able to have people come into their museum. So they asked me to create a virtual exhibition for them. And to put this show into some historical context, it was the first web-based VR exhibition backed by a cultural institution in Italy. And I'm happy to say that as such, it really received a flurry of press. And I thought that it would be fun for this talk if we could be very interactive about things, but I'd like to start by just showing you a fly-through of the exhibition. So Michael, if you can play the video, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Switch, actually.
And Michael, if you can keep the volume low, I'm going to just talk over it, actually.
Is that all right? Can you hear it?
Yeah, there's a little bit of sound. If there could be a little bit of sound, that's probably okay. So this exhibition explores the idea that throughout the canon of art history, artists have used the body as a canvas to talk about political, social, and cultural ideology. And actually, my idea for the show came about as a result of the pandemic. I began to think about how people are preoccupied with their bodies and the digital representations of how they are seen. I also started to think about how in real life interactions were being replaced by Zoom calls and social media posts. And in fact, the pandemic has brought about re-examination of the basic fragility and resilience of our bodies. This artist, you see the sculpture here, her name is Martina Menegano. We just teleported inside of her work. And her piece, All Alone Together, uses virtual clones of her 3D body to address ideas of identity and the almost synthetic fragility of our bodies. Her work was the inspiration for the title of this exhibition. Synthetic Corporal Reality examines works by 13 international artists, many who are digital pioneers, and who have chosen the body as a vessel for the realization of their artistic goals. There is a new, more encompassing definition of what I call sculpture art in the digital age. Artists using computers to create images of the body do so in a variety of digital mediums. Synthetic corporeality includes digital artworks which focus on the body as a vehicle to discuss a variety of themes. The topics include gender politics, personal data collection and surveillance in the digital age, and a search for identity. Further ideas expressed are about the enduring nature of love despite illness and the connection between art, technology, and death. In addition, a few artists celebrate the body in motion, as well as its beauty and its resilience. The artworks displayed include site-specific immersive installations, photography, and video sculptures, GIFs, and deepfake AI technology. So as you saw in this video, Michael, you can just advance it to the next slide, please. The exhibition is actually an exhibition inside of an exhibition. As you move around the space, the artwork you see is really on the first layer of the exhibition. And it's only by clicking on the view room links that you actually see the artwork fully unveiled. And it is in these subworlds that you can then experience the installation and immersive experiences that were specially designed for the show. This exhibition showcases increasingly diverse ways of representing what we take for granted, the very depiction of our bodies, by using a range of technical innovations, whether in a more historical stop motion approach, like in Zhou Xiaohu's The Gooey Gentleman, in which the artist, this is the piece on the left that you see, portrays the figures in surprising ways by using the torso as an actual canvas to depict the battle of the sexes. Or in Rebecca Allen's piece on the right, Figures in Motion, which is a response to a lifelong interest in bodies that are in motion and how technology can represent them. Next slide, please. On the very far left, you'll see a video when we actually go into the space with a piece by Miao Xiao Chun, who explores the role of cultural and intercultural memory in a very unusual way. He inserted his nude body to replace the figures painted in iconic masterpieces across time. Other artists in the exhibition used GIFs and artificial intelligence as AI as artistic tools to express their ideas about body politics. Next slide, please. Carla Ganis uses GIFs as well as an AI to create a virtual installation, which is a contemporary response to Gustave Courbet's painting L'Origine du Monde in 1886. In her version, Origins of the Universe Dimensioning, Ms. Ganis has created an animated GIF and a virtual subworld that references both Courbet's painting and the current fad of 3D printing custom smartphone holders. Next slide, please. Michael, next slide, please.
Are you, maybe you're not seeing, I'm on Tamiko.
Oh, you're on Tamiko, okay. When Tamiko uses AI to recreate our faces and emotions in a deep fake to highlight the dangers of how the very thing we value the most about our identity can be manipulated beyond our control. And when this piece was actually shown in a museum, what happened is you'd walk into the museum, somebody would ask to take your photo. And as you walk through the museum into a large corridor, there would be your deepfake. And she would basically superimpose your face with the face of a political figure, as well as the text of what the political figure was saying. Okay, next slide, please. Artists Tim Deuce and Emmanuel Zimmer tell a moving narrative about the enduring nature of love despite terminal illness by translating a physical work that used AR and photography into a web-based VR work that uses video and photography in a time tunnel to recreate the physical experiences of the artwork. I'm thinking, Michael, how much time do I have left? Should we just go into the exhibition? Because I still have about 5 more slides to talk about. And I'm just thinking we could talk about it inside the exhibition.
Do you want to go into corpo, synthetic corpo reality, or cadenza?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. 1 second. So yes, it was corpo, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
So I'm deviating a bit from my program. I have lots of other slides to show you, but I think it would be really fun just to go into the exhibition to see what I'm talking about. You got a little bit of a sense from it from the video. So what we're looking at right now, Michael is choosing a avatar Did you want to go into the workshop space or not, Michael? Or we're going to just go straight into the exhibition?
Well,
I
so
guess we're going straight into the exhibition.
Yeah, I'm sorry. For Cadenza, I had the intro. Would you like to go into here instead? Into the welcome area of Cadenza? It's similar, but it's not.
Yeah, do you have it?
I do.
Oh, you have it of Cadenza. Oh, okay. Okay, so I just wanted to show you what the welcome tutorial room looks like. So when you spawn in, there are directions and signage about how you would move in the space. And you can see the logo that Meet put up. This is all the Italian graphics. And on the right and the left, you have actually video monitors that give you tutorials on how to move in this platform. And so this platform, this exhibition is accessible through a headset, through a link on your computer, or also on a cell phone. And you can see Michael is just activating the video, and then there's a tutorial about how to move in the space. And if you go behind this, there's a big open space here. And it's almost the same space for the synthetic corporal reality exhibition. And one of the great things about having a tutorial or a welcome space before your exhibition is it gives you a training center. And also you can do workshops in this space. And so Meet did a variety of workshops, including dance performances. Michael and I did a workshop together on how to identify what platform would best fit your needs to have an exhibition. And then at the very back of it, then on either side, we have some text about the exhibition. And then on the very back, you would teleport to get into my Cadenza show. And my Cadenza show is actually an exhibition that I'm going to be doing at the Meet Digital Culture Center in September. And it's a preview. This would be a preview of what's to come. But Michael, can we, for the sake of sanity, could we go back to the Corpo Synthetic Reality exhibition first?
Yep, going back to it now.
Okay. All right, now we're going to go back into the exhibition that I was originally talking about. Okay, and so Michael is just accessing this on his computer. And so the frame time is, there's a little bit of a lag because we're on Zoom. So here you see, as I was talking about, as you move through the space. So Michael, I was thinking if you just want to walk around the space, and then we could also fly around the space to give people an overview. So this is what looks like a museum exhibition space. And what I was telling you before is that in order to actually see the artworks, this is the illusion of seeing the artworks, you must teleport to get inside of the artworks. Why don't we start with Oria Harvey's piece? And now we're flying around the exhibition.
Yeah, let's see, here we go.
Oria Harvey is, yeah, there we go. And can you show them? Oops, okay, that's okay. I was just going to show you, there was a picture of the artist holding a single rose. So this is a very, and Michael, if you want to like go and approach the sculptures, you can see what happens. The closer you get to them, the more they disappear into points of light. But this is a very deeply personal piece for the artist that made this at a moment when she was depressed. And the day before her 46th birthday. And she took photos of herself, first with a single rose. And she had been reading Dante and decided that she wanted to live her life for love. And on the day of her birthday, she presented herself with a bouquet of roses and then took a picture of that. And then she made 3D scans of her body. And there is actually sound embedded in this. So when you move through the experience, you do hear the artist reading some passages from Dante. But I think one of the beautiful things about this is that it's a sculptural object, and that as you go close to it, it just disappears into these points of light. So Michael, if you can go a little bit closer actually to the points of light, you can see, and there's the image of the artist with her roses in hand. Now, if you can find the way back to the exhibition, I thought it might be entertaining for people to actually fly up to Sophie Kahn sculpture.
So each time you certain rooms you can fly, you just have to say that you want to.
Okay, so right now we are just flying above the exhibition, and then you can just actually fly up to the top of the sculpture. And this is a sculpture that the artist Sophie Kahn made with live Buto dancers, which is an ancient Japanese dance form where the artists actually fall. And she would give them a prompt to fall. And Michael, can you fly down almost through it so that people can see this entirely new, different way of experiencing sculpture? So this is the one thing I love about exhibiting in virtual realms, is that since you don't have gravity, you can see things in an entirely different way. So anyway, the bodies were 3D laser scanned, and you can see that there are holes in the surface of these sculptures. And that's because the computer couldn't actually scan and deal with all of the data of a human. And so the artist was very interested in how computers misrepresent humans and what they remember as she's scanning the bodies. And you can see below that blue box was actually when Sophie was doing for the opening reception a live body scan. And you can see how the computer is actually recording the data. And I think it would be interesting also, Michael, if we can go over to Nancy Baker Cahill's piece, please. Which is just on the other side of Boreas.
And Julie, just for reference of time, we maybe can save some of it as well for the Q&A, or after the initial presentation too.
Okay. So this piece is called Ever Now, and it was actually originally commissioned by Facebook. But what you see as it comes closer and closer to you, it looks like paint, splashes of paint. And as it recedes, you realize that the image is a ballerina. And each of these splashes of paint actually represents a biometric data point that is being taken from us without our consent. And the whole piece has to do with the dangers of data extraction. So Michael, do we have time to jump into cadenza briefly and see one or two pieces for the preview? Or
yeah, I think we can just, yeah. Let me switch back over to cadenza.
So as we're getting there, I'll just tell you a little bit about the exhibition. The name cadenza is a musical term. That means the moment in time when an instrumentalist or singer is allowed to improvise out of the prescribed rhythm of the music piece. And the exhibition cadenza is again an international exhibition with many innovators in the fusion of digital art and music. The type of music represents from, it comes from Buto and popular Japanese music to the Punjabi, and other musical genres include classical, blues, experimental pop, and sound art. I'm thinking it could be fun to just go into Kim Jun's piece right here. This is an artist from Korea who is very inspired by the blues. And Michael, can you have sound playing?
I had it before. I'm not sure if you could hear it so clearly.
I'm not able to hear anything. I don't know if other people are not, but since it's a sound show.
Do you? I hear something, but I'm not sure if the rest of you will hear it. But it's good. It's good blues. I'll confirm that.
It's very good blues music. I am not actually hearing anything. And I don't know if other people are hearing it or not.
Oh, there's another. Oh, is that a mirror? Yeah, it is a mirror.
Yeah, it's a mirror. That's the avatar. That's Michael inside the space. Okay, let's just take a quick pop into one or two other pieces. But of course, the music is all central to the work. Can you go into Miao Shao Chun, which is on your left, please? Right there, yeah. Well, it's a really shame that you can't hear this. If people can hear it or not, but it's classical music playing. And the classical music is critical to the way that the piece looks, actually. And if you scoot back, Michael, you should be able to see the piece happening on 3 different screens. This is an artist who's one of the digital pioneers from China. He's based in Shanghai, and this piece examines the relationship between man, art, and technology. And it's at a much, much faster speed than this, which you can't tell because of the lag. So maybe we will leave this and go to a different piece. So one of the things I would mention about this cadenza show is it's going to be seen in reality at the Meet Digital Culture Center in September. So they have something called the VR corner. So people will have headsets that they'll put on and then access this work. And we have strong interest from the center to tokenize the artworks, which means that they would be available for sale using FNFTs. And Frédéric will tell you more about this concept. And people would be able to then purchase works that they responded to support the artist and the institution. Can you go into the one on the right, Matteo Zamagni, please? And his piece is, if you could hear the music, it's experimental sound music. And the images all have to do with nature's refractions in the world and fractals. And as we're looking at this, I'll just tell you one more thing. One of the artists, Chimiko Teo, who when you first spawned in actually to this exhibition, you would have seen rose petals that were blowing towards you. And this is her piece. And she also did the deep fake piece in the other exhibition. And the funny thing is, talk about going from virtual to a physical exhibition. Because of this virtual exhibition, the director talked to me and we decided that we would do a physical exhibition at the Meet Digital Culture Center. So this could also, you could also use an exhibition like this as a preview to go talk to other museums to get interested in creating actually a physical version of this. Okay, Michael, I think probably my time is about up.
Yeah, we can stop it here. I'll stop sharing my screen. And yeah, thank you very much, Julie. So, I mean, I think we'll have a lot to talk about it with what time we have at the end, but I'd like to turn it over now to Frédéric, if you'd like to talk about Art Consortium.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much to give me the occasion to talk with you. I'm very glad of that. To say a few words about me, I'm in the art world for 15 years now. I started being a producer for artists, and then I run a contemporary mobile museum for Paris region. And I launched one of the first gallery focusing on digital art and using blockchain. It was in 2015. And now we are working on Art Consortium. And one of the goal of Art Consortium is to set up a new kind of patronage for the museum. And we want to activate, in fact, the financement facilities for the museum to acquire artworks, of course, to help artists to broadcast their artwork, and to give the occasion to the collectors and the patronage to share their action to help the creation. So what we do is that for any artwork, digital or not, we split the artwork in two different parts. And on one side, we have a first token, we call it a custody token, and it represents the custody and the management. And this token stays in the hand of the museum or the gallery. And the museum has the total liberty to exhibit the artwork in the physical world or in the virtual world. And in parallel of that, we allow collectors and friends of the museum or any public, any art lover, to purchase a part of the ownership of this artwork. And this is where we have the fractional NFT Julie talked. And when you buy a part of this artwork, so you can start supporting the museum and the artist for few euros or 1,000 euros or whatever. And of course, the number of fraction is limited. So it's something like you became a shareholder of the artwork doing that. And when you start helping the museum to acquire this artwork, you became a co-collector, a co-patrons, and you have the opportunity to show these artworks in your private virtual museum. It means that you are able to broadcast the artwork to your own community. So it's a way to give the opportunity to people to say to the public that they are engaged to help creation. And it's also a way to create several entries to the artworks, because the artwork will be seen, of course, from the museum website, but it will be possible to discover it in any virtual personal museum also. And because we think that it's important for collectors and patrons to say the personal relation they have with the artwork. So in their own museum, they will have the possibility to create their own exhibition with their collection and to draw some new links between the different artworks of their collection. So to do it like that, finally, we think it's a good way at the same time for the museum, because they can increase their collection. And of course, it's important for an artist to see its artwork getting a public collection, because we know that this is the highest level of selection, and it is the best way for an artist to get in the history of art. And it's important for the collector because he can show his engagement to everyone. And so we work on different projects to do that. We start to talk with different museums, and the launch will be in September with the exhibition of Julie Cadenza. So I'm very, very happy to work with her. And we also work with different art fairs to give the very commercial aspect of art fair to be at the service of a general public interest to help museums to increase their collection.
All right, thank you very much, Frederic. And yeah, now Esra, if you're ready to tell us about what you're working on.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation. And yes, I would like to give information about myself a little bit. I'm focused on the raw material to highlight the cognitive experiences created by interdisciplinary artists using emerging technologies. And also I frequently collaborate with interdisciplinary artists and technologists who deal with the political and the social problems caused by emerging technologies. And my curatorial and the academic writings brings philosophy together with the post-digital terminology and the effects of the post-human concepts in the interdisciplinary arts. And I'm a digital art curator, and now currently I'm a curator and a director of the Isu Media Art Museum. There is an immersive space, and also I would like to give information about the history of the immersive technologies and the VR and also immersive technologies. Can I share my screen?
I believe you can.
Okay. One second. Yeah.
Okay, we can see it.
Yeah. In 1935, the Stanley short story of Spectaculars, VR entered minds of the mentioning the fact that senses such as smell and the touch can be experienced through glasses. And Morton Hellings invents a device called Experience Theater, which laid the foundation of VR. And about 30 years after the story of the Spectaculars. And this device takes the experience to center and makes the first launch of 4D cinema along with VR. In the theater of experience, a stereoscopic 3D images prototype and called Sensorama, and the stereo sound system, smell and the wind and the vibration and interactions, allowing the viewer to have a holistic experience. So it builds a multisensory simulator. And by the 1968, the VR model that has come to today for the first time was made by taking the classic story and performing arts to another dimension. And the first model, which takes the place in history and the sword of Damocles, and was designed in 1968, and in the form of a device that connects to the computer. But the device was so heavy and that it could only be used by connected into the ceiling. And through the 1960s and the 70s, new developments are constantly happening in the VR. And so that the United States Army closely interested in these developments. And immediately after that, they use plot training simulations begin to be conducted. And in 1965, NASA View VR was developed by three senior scientists and funded by countless investments from the American federal government to control space robots. So then the game industry came in the sector, and Sega, it will realize a VR that can be used with game consoles. And then after that, when we reached the 20s, differently designed models of VR glasses came out and the experience is improved. And immersive technologies, on the other hand, give us 360-degree experience like VR and the play with perceptions. Today, immersive technologies and exhibitions combined with physical spaces and architecture. So immersive spaces addresses the viewer physical space experience, and the venue experience starts before the audience enters the exhibition. However, the subject, which we call space and architecture, has changed meaning a lot. In the digital world, the exhibition can move forward with the mouse or the keyboard keys, And if you are seeing the reflection of metaverse in the VR glasses today, you are also moving forward with more sensors here. And you are entering the exhibition from your phone and on tablet by using only finger types. So in a nutshell, the silver screen is the screen of your phone today. Your actions in the front of the technology are also changing. So I'm trying to open an exhibition in these situations as a digital arts creator, and I'm currently I'm a director and the creator of the X Media Art Museum, the first digital art museum in Turkey. This is an immersive space with 750 square meter. And our exhibition belongs to famous studio Arch. And I would like to share our museum video. Yes, just a second. Okay.
Light and darkness comes to life again. AI. Have you ever experienced 15 billion Da Vinci paintings? Mind of the genius explores limitless creativity, breaking boundaries and reaching new dimensions. Metaverses of humanity, seen to NASA. Da Vinci, wisdom.
X Media Art Museum brings together the original productions combining technology, science, and art, the new form of art created by blending the past with the present and the digital artworks within the audience. In this way, the museum also presents new reflections of art that make the audience a part of its art and makes the audience active, and with its inclusive and interactive interdisciplinary art productions and the experiences on multiple and extended scales. And also the planned cooperation of different stakeholders in the creative industries and the culture of art with technology, science, and the studies in the field of arts, kinetic arts, which has different subheadings of digital arts, such as bioarts, which is my favorite also, and the algorithmic arts, and the biodesign, and the AR, XR, and the VR too. And the plans open new perspectives on topics such as XMOM, it's called X Media Art Museum, connects, which opened doors in January in cooperation with Dastas in the location in Ataşehir, and a different building other than the Dastas in the metropole Istanbul. And lastly, as I just mentioned, the subject that we call experience is shaped by leaving a mark on the humankind, and whether you are in the digital or physical world, the knowledge about an exhibition that stays in the viewer's mind in some form that helps them to convey their experience. And we offer a discover space audience, both as technology and experience in a museum in the full range. We have access to the technology used in 35 movie theaters, and we use projections and produce our content. And in such as the main things is to walk and be a part of work. And also another important topic is storytelling. And we are doing storytelling while describing the work. And of course, the audience expectations of the exhibitions also varies geographically, I think. And the audience in Turkey is interested in storytelling and the purpose works with a story. And lastly, so I believe that web technologies and the immersive technologies and or improve Web3 and also blockchain technologies. And we should thinking about what is the reality and what is the artificial. And also we are trying to adapt this physical world to the virtual world, but it is true or not, I don't know. But I believe the experiences will change our intuition. And so, thank you very much. This conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Estra. And so now, what I'd like to do is to kind of establish some conversation between the three of you, if we can find some common topics. So now that each of you have kind of presented a little bit about what you're doing and what you're interested in, maybe some of even your concerns about some of these technologies. I'll just first ask, is there any response that anyone has to anything else anyone has said thus far? And if not, I have a couple questions. All right. Well, so the first question. So we're talking about, again, very different types of exhibitions, right? Even though we're talking about some of the same technologies. In fact, we're talking in many cases about very different technologies with regard to exhibition, because we're talking about a virtual exhibition in Julie's case, and with Frederic as well. And in Esra, your case, you're talking about a traditional business model, a traditional exhibition venue, but in using it in new ways, in ways that space was probably, in some cases, maybe not designed for. So it's maybe even a reflection artistically on the space, from that artist. How do you see these technologies creating new opportunities for artists? And maybe in a geographic sense, coming out of COVID, as we come back to maybe more traditional exhibition opportunities, what do these technologies maybe offer? And I'll leave that to whoever wants to respond first to that.
Okay, I'll respond.
Yeah, I was looking at you.
The thing is that I think increasingly the pandemic has really pushed digital artists to consider multiple approaches to talking about their artwork, whether it's in a virtual, a physical, or some sort of a hybrid state. And I think the takeaway from the pandemic is more and more artists will be doing a hybrid state, which means that it's possible to take, for example, any of the artists' works that you saw in either of my exhibitions. These artists do full-scale VR installations. These artists do new media installations. These artists do live streaming, augmented reality installations, and combine that experience in a physical museum with a virtual representation as well. And as you saw from my presentation, it's very rewarding, I think, for the artists and for the audiences too, to have this sort of overlap between the physical and the virtual. And there's no reason that you couldn't have a beautiful immersive exhibition, a multi-channel projection, and at the same time have that show recreated and archived for the future for the public to see in a virtual exhibition space. And one of the things that's very exciting to me about immersive technologies when it's applied to art is that artists can now have a way to show their work anywhere. to anyone. And one of the things that Frédéric was talking about with Art Consortium is this possibility of when we tokenize digital artworks or physical artworks for that matter, we can really rebuild communities and create different types of accessibility to cultural institutions than has happened in the past, because it means that anybody that goes into a space and sees a wonderful immersive experience can then do the equivalent of what you do on Instagram. You like it, but in this case, you would buy it for, you know, maybe $1 or €1, and that money goes to the artist. That money goes back into the cultural institution or the foundation. And that's also very exciting to me, the possibilities of blockchain technology.
And just to add a word, what is interesting is finally we discover that the scenography in real life, of course, is an influence for scenography in virtual life, but the opposite, the way the return is also possible. And when we see what Esra do, finally we feel like we have an headset, but in real life. So, you know, we play with that kind of relationship with the artwork, where finally we have a lot to invent to discover a new kind of interaction with the video and with all the holograms. And so I think it was very interesting to see Esra's work, because we see that the environment, we have different type of environment, and we have to play with it physically and virtually, and to introduce a discussion between the two.
Yeah, I definitely can see that from like a design perspective, right? It's easier sometimes to prototype virtually. And so not just recreating a physical installation virtually, but using a variant of a work to test out ideas before making the big effort in physical. Esra, yeah, what do you think about this topic?
Actually, I can change my language. Sorry for that. And you can continue interpretation in English, or Frédéric and Julie.
Okay.
And aslında ben konunun biraz daha şurasındayım. Web 3.0 teknolojileri ve internetteki deneyimlerimiz hala fiziki dünyadaki deneyimlerimiz. Yani biz hala fiziki dünyada ne yapıyorsak bunu sanal dünyada yapmaya çalışıyoruz. Dolayısıyla mimari kurmaya çalışıyoruz ve hala fiziki dünyadaki gibi mimariler kuruyoruz. Yol yapmaya çalışıyoruz, sergi alanı yapmaya çalışıyoruz ama fiziki dünyadakine benzeterek yapmaya çalışıyoruz. Bunu ben de böyle yapıyorum bu arada. Çünkü teknoloji kısıtları var ve bana bunu sağlıyor. Oysa ki deneyim dediğimiz konu, az önce de bahsettiğim gibi ben mouse'la da yürüyebilirim ama bir sergi alanında da yürüyebilirim. Dolayısıyla Web3 teknolojileri ve bu immersive teknolojilerin bunları daha da geliştirmesi gerektiğine inanıyorum. Çünkü diğer türlü biz hala fiziki dünyayı taklit ediyor olacağız. Bu da aslında fiziki dünyayı taklit ediyor olmak da aslında çok bizi geliştirebilecek bir noktada değil. Diğer bir konu ise arşiv konusu. Bence çok önemli. Biz de şu anda bunun üstüne çalışıyoruz. Benim size az önce izlettiğim sergideki eseri ortalama 800 GB. Yani çok büyük. Ve 800 GB'lık bir eseri saklıyor olabilmeniz ve depolayabilmeniz gerçekten büyük bir sorun. Ve bunu bir de geleceğe aktarmanız çok bir sorun. Çünkü müzesiniz ve konservasyon var. Dolayısıyla konservasyon tarafında da onu saklayıp depolamak, geleceğe aktarmak büyük bir konu. Biraz daha bu taraflarla bence bu Web 3.0, VR, XR, AR, hologram, neyse o teknoloji biraz daha aslında bunları geliştireceğini düşünüyorum. Çünkü biz bugünkü teknolojiyi bugün eser üretiyoruz. 20 yıl sonraki teknolojiyle bugünkü eserleri sergileyemezsek ne olacak? Bu da bence bunun getirmiş olduğu sorunlardan bir diğeri, çözüm bulunması gereken. Teşekkür ederim.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I'm not sure, Frédéric or Julie, if you have any translation service provided. So I think we'll just have to
I
move on.
did right at the end. I did right at the end, actually. But
Okay.
I think to respond to that, that's very fascinating. And I think one of the things I've spent a lot of time thinking about is how using virtual exhibition spaces could be a form of archiving. For example, you can recreate the exact same museum space that you have, or you could build something entirely different. For Meet, they wanted a space that was different, but then they put in their logos and their graphic design, and they used a color scheme in their training room and welcoming room. So there's all sorts of ways of doing it, but I think it has real potential going forward as a place to archive exhibitions for the future in these virtual exhibition spaces. And just to be able to share, once you create an exhibition, for example, the synthetic corporeal reality was created, the exhibition we saw was created 2 years ago, and it's still running pretty well. Of course, platforms, I'm sure, as Michael will tell you, do change and over time, but you can make fly-throughs also when you create a virtual show to document it.
And we had a question, or rather a comment from Rana Öztürk in the chat, which I'm not sure, Esra, if you were as well in your response, it covered this, but Julie, Rana was asking a very familiar question, which is, why still, if in VR you can do lots of things, why do VR galleries and exhibitions still look like traditional ones? Or why are they still set up in kind of a white box style environment? And I certainly have a response to that, but I'm curious how you would respond to that. I think you kind of touched on it, right?
I don't quite understand the question. Is the question about why when you go into virtual reality it looks that way, or is the question in the physical space for the VR?
It's why, if you have a virtual exhibition, and thus you could have any kind of architecture that you want, why is it that we still very often, and this, obviously yours actually have got much, your individual rooms, the individual worlds that the artists made are often quite different, but at least the center space and in Museum of Other Realities and some of these other ones, why do they look like physical museums? Why do they look like physical galleries when in VR they could be things like area for virtual art? We talked about another exhibition space that plays with that.
Right. I don't think there's any rules to the way that an architectural space could be. I think it's very much up to that cultural institution in terms of how they want to represent the art. I think that for a lot of people, because VR is still new and immersive technologies are still new to most people, that it's some people might think it was a little bit comforting to have some reference to the art world and to something that's recognizable. So one of the things I was playing with in my exhibition is when you first go into the space, you think it looks like a museum space, but actually that's just a placeholder for the real art. And then when you teleport in, then you actually have the experience of seeing the real art. So I don't think there's any rules, and I think there's a lot of different variety going on. So I don't think all virtual exhibitions are directly referencing museums. There's many different permutations.
All right. Well, so we have maybe a couple minutes left before, I guess, the next panel. Are there any additional questions from the group? One thing I thought to have asked, but Julie, you kind of touched on it actually, was with virtual exhibitions, it changes, right, the temporality of work. As you mentioned, the synthetic corporeal reality is 2 years now. It's permanent, and probably it never could have been physically permanent, right? But with the virtual exhibition, it could be permanent. Do you think this maybe will lead to changes in how artists conceive their works when now knowing that a work may be more permanent or certainly more long lasting than it would have been? And for Esra, I wonder as well, when you do these large installations in these places, I don't know how many months you can commit to it, but do you think it would change the way it was designed if the artist knew this could be up for years? So actually, that was, for either one of you.
I mean, I could.
Yes,
I think it's definitely. Frederick, go ahead.
Yeah, well, just to say that, yeah, in fact, the exhibition are a kind of a creation. And of course, exhibition create links between different artworks. And it's a way to see the artworks. And we all think about exhibitions that happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and it's not possible to see it anymore. And of course, just like you say, Michael, I'm sure that the virtual museum will be a way to create the archive of exhibition. So of course, we have a lot of issue about the technical aspect, but we always have a lot of issue when we want to preserve the artworks through centuries. So it's a new challenge, but we have to be optimistic about that. And for sure, yeah, it's a new kind of archive.
But I wonder if even archiving is the right concept, right? Because archiving is to kind of keep, it's not out in front, right? It's somewhere else in the back, and we're going to preserve it in case we want to bring it out again. But in some cases with these virtual exhibitions, it could just be, it's a 10-year exhibition. It never went away. But yeah, maybe that does change. It just changes like how the value of it, right? Because memory maybe gives additional value.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not an archive in the sense that you will not look after it in the background. It's always on. Just like a space in the real life, you always can go in that street or in that museum, and it would be the same for the virtual museum and virtual exhibition.
Şöyle bir ekleme yapabilirim orada. Şimdi bir eserin nasıl sergileneceğiyle ilgili sonuçta sanatçı bize referans verir. Bu aslında zaman ve mekanla alakalı. Yani bu tabii geçmişten gelen deneyimlerimiz böyle. Şimdi biz sanal ortama geçtiğimizde zaman ve mekan algısını zaten bir anda kırdığımız için, zaten zamansızlık ve aslında mekansızlık ve aslında duvarsızlığı önerdiğimiz için buradaki arşivleme biraz daha somut kalıyor. Bir depolama gibi kalıyor. Yani işte bunu USB'de de ben arşivleyebilirim. Ama ben bunu nasıl sergileyebilirim? Yani ben bunu 20 yıl sonra aynı projeksiyonla sergileyemeyeceğim büyük ihtimalle. Kendi dünyamda. Çünkü kocaman bir depolamaya ihtiyacım var. Cloud sistemine ihtiyacım var. Ve teknik ekipmana da ihtiyacım var. Ama burada konu depolama, arşivleme ve sergileme ve hatta etik olarak sanatçının haklarını koruyarak sanatçının istediği şekilde sergileme gibi bir konu da ortaya çıkıyor. Diğeri de sanatçı ve izleyici arasındaki bağla birlikte eseri korumak, depolamak ve bir sonraki nesle aktarmak ve yeniden sergilemek. Dolayısıyla depolama ve saklama hikayesi 5 farklı parametreden oluşuyor. Biz şu an için güncel olarak Web 3.0 ve blockchain ve NFT teknolojileriyle birlikte telif haklarını korumaya, eserin depolanmasına çalışıyoruz ve arşivlenmesine çalışıyoruz. Ama nasıl sergileneceğiyle ilgili bir kültürel miras ve bir varlık henüz oluşturmuş değiliz. Dolayısıyla bu hikayenin en büyüğü bir zaman ve mekan olması, bir de olmamasıyla alakalı. Bilmiyorum cevap oldu mu ama bu 5 unsur olmazsa olmaz bizim hayatımızda.
All right. Well, with that, I think we actually are out of time. So I would like to just kind of wrap up and thank all the panelists for their time and their energy, and thank all the attendees for staying with us the whole time. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you again, Julie, Frederic, and Esra. Thank you, Hatice, Hoca, for putting this all together, and Kerim for your support launching it. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
And there is a player change for the closing speech, actually. We'll continue after a break at 7 p.m. But thank you very much for all the participants, for all the information. It was really an honor to listen to you. So hope to see you again at 7 p.m. We will host Dr. Christian Sprengler after a short break. So see you all in the same link, in the same address. Hatice hocam çağıracak mısınız deneme yapmaya acaba?
Çağırmıştım. Kısa süre çıktı, büyük olasılık gelecek tekrar.
Tamam hocam.
O gelince bir 10 dakika sonra denemeyi yaparız. O şekilde yazmıştım çünkü ben.
Tamam o zaman onu bekleyelim hocam. Görüşürüz.
Görüşürüz.